Hello and welcome to Film Slam Stream's post-film conversation for How to Sue the Klan. My name is Eric Siler, and I'm an instructor of film, media arts, and communications, as well as moderator for this conversation. We're very pleased to be joined by the director of this film, John Beater. John hails from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and he's an Emmy-nominated Asian American filmmaker. And his film, How to Sue the Klan, is also an Oscar qualifying film. We look forward to talking to him more about it. Hello, John, and welcome.
Hey Eric, thanks so much for having me and really appreciate being part of this program.
It's great to have you as well. And for you, this story is almost personal. It's a local story, and you just wanted to tell a story that was happening in this town, but it exploded into more. How did this come about from just wanting to tell a story about your town to expanding it internationally?
When I first heard this story, it was just on a Facebook post. It was just someone talking about a Klan shooting that had happened here in Chattanooga. And at the time, I was working at our local PBS station. And so I started asking my colleagues, and the resounding response was, I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard this story. And so for me, it really grew as this responsibility to make sure that, at the very least, my city knew the story of five women who took the Klan to civil court and won. Um, we really had a humble kind of ambition to make sure that everyone in the city knew the story. And so we thought about doing screenings at high schools and colleges. But by the time we were finished, we were applying to film festivals all over the country and getting in. And so we've just been amazed at how many people outside of our city love this story. And we always knew that it had the potential to inspire folks everywhere, but seeing it happen and seeing, folks like in Cleveland who want to see the film and Los Angeles and New York and all over is just so incredible for us as filmmakers and for a local team. So the film was also produced here in Chattanooga by a local team.
That's really good that you could do something like that for your city and also educate people as well too. Tell us a little bit about the production of this when you first, excuse me, when you first heard about this film. How long did it take for you to develop the story and film it and edit it? Just take us briefly through that production process.
Absolutely. So I first learned about this story in during the summer of, or maybe it was the spring or summer of 2020, just around the time of pandemic beginning. And so we spent that first roughly a year in pre-production. This was kind of gathering a team, seeing if we could raise some money for the film. And for a long time, I actually was not planning to direct the film. I was just going to produce it. And the goal was to find a local director who could bring their experience, their lived experience. And so we spent that year gathering crew, money, and also just trying to understand the story. This is something that happened 40 years ago. So while some of the folks who are directly connected are still with us, there were many people who passed away. And so we had to understand what kind of elements of the story were still available to us, what maybe had been lost to time. And then we spent the next roughly year and a half or so after that first year in production. Um, Part of the reason this film took a little while is we were raising money as we went. So we would raise money, go out and film, try to gather more archival material. Money would kind of run out, we'd raise more and keep going. And so after this is now 2.5 years in, we finished production and began the editing phase. The editing phase took roughly another year and a half, making the total making of this film around 4 years. But there was kind of a nice surprise that happened during the editing phase. So we had just began kind of collecting the story into what's called an assembly, where we kind of put all the elements together to understand what we had and what we could make with all this material. And we had an incredible opportunity to share that with civil rights attorney Ben Crump. Mr. Crump saw the film, or the assembly, I should say, was very impressed and said, I want to be a part of this. I also think that you're missing how impactful this story is to today's civil rights cases. And so he enlightened us and inspired us to really center our third act, the last third of the film, on kind of what's happening now and how the legacy of these women is being used again in civil rights cases. It's one of those things where you would hope that we wouldn't need the precedent set by these women still today, 40 years later, but we do. And so that process, that editing process, went from being around 6 months to a year and a half. We went back and reshot some things, gathered some more materials, and then earlier this year we premiered in our city for a credible audience full of people from Chattanooga who had never heard this story before. So from start to finish, 4 years or so is what we say. And you always want them to be shorter. I remember telling people it would take 2 years at the beginning, and there we were 4 years later. But all that to say, it took as long as it kind of had to take, unfortunately. But we're glad we persevered.
Well, you had to do diligence for a story like this, and I'm glad you got it in front of Mr. Crump. How did that happen? How did you get his ear and actually connect with him to actually sit down and watch it? Such a busy person as he is.
That's quite the story. So we identified Attorney Crump as a potential executive producer very early on. Based on the story that we were telling, based on the work that he was doing, we always knew we wanted to connect the film with him at some point, even if he just watched it. And so, probably about midway through production, we said, let's try and connect with him. Let's do whatever we can to connect with Attorney Crump. And there's lots of names that we had thrown out there, but this is the person that we really said, let's put all of our eggs into this basket. And so we set about this journey of saying, okay, who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone who might know someone. And someone in our group, an associate producer, said, I went to school with the daughter of B.B. Winans, the famous singer. And a lot of people remember BB and CC Winans. And I talked to BB, which took maybe 3 months to finally get a call with him. And he said, I know someone who knows Ben Crump. So let me see if I can call someone. So now we're up to, I think, the third connection. And we meet this woman who's also an attorney. And she says, I'm friends with Ben. Let me see the film. This is now 8 months have gone by because everyone is very busy. These are all very busy people. And she says, okay, I'm gonna get this to his team. Another 3 months go by, and all the while we're just, we don't really have anything to stand on besides our persistence. But we use that, and we don't annoy anyone, but we just ask every couple weeks, how's it going? Is there any change? What do you think? And so um, probably now almost a year later, we get a call with Attorney Crump's manager. And he says, send me the film. The person who connected me, she's a real friend of Ben's. I trust her. Let me watch the film. Another 3 months goes by. He says, we finally have a window. Ben's going to take a look at the film this weekend. And maybe days later, I got a call from him, which was, shaking, you can imagine, just after 18 months of trying to meet this man. And beyond being just the kindest person I could have imagined, and he was exactly as I hoped. He was just so interested and willing to help and trying to figure out how. And he was like, I want to be in the film if I can, because not only do I think you're missing how important this is, something he mentioned, which I'll never forget, he said, I didn't know about this story. So I'm going to start using this case in my cases going forward because you've told me and because I now know. And I need other lawyers to do the same. So I'm going to make it my mission to get this story out into the world, and I would love to be a part of it. It completely changed the trajectory of the film. I think there's so many more people who gave the story a chance, and let it into their lives because of him. And of course, we want people to watch the film no matter what, but he has an incredible platform. Um, and so him just sharing it on social media and talking about it with his friends has absolutely changed the life of the film. So we're so beyond grateful. And you know, I I can tell you there are many months in those 18 months where we said it's not going to happen. We're just not going to get to him. This person said yes, but then they didn't. But we just kept going and eventually got through to him. So I'm amazed and encourage people to be persistent but not annoying. There is a line there that you can ride. That's good for everyone.
Absolutely. That's tremendous advice. Keep nudging, but do it in a very tactful way. I'm glad you shared that whole scenario with getting the ear of Attorney Crump with that. And actually he actually turned the film up a notch because you were just telling the story. He elevated it. And I could easily see this film. Like he said, when I saw the film, I said, oh, how many law schools are using this or high school classes or so forth. So it's great. Do you planning to do anything further with the film, like in terms of creating an educational guide or connect it more with education?
Absolutely. You just mentioned it, but law schools was one of the top priorities for our film. So we had our law school premiere at Harvard Law School, which is incredible, and have done screenings at law schools around the country. And those are particularly special because you actually get to meet people who say, I want to do this now. Or how do I meet these attorneys and how do I get into this work? And of course, I'm just a film director, but I know the people to point them to and the directions to point them in. And so, yeah, we have been working with an educational distributor called Good Docs, who are really looking after the university side of all of our screenings, which is why I'm so glad that this is offering to um, high schools and people outside of that realm. But we know the power of film, and there are things that you can tangibly kind of think of as goals when you're making a film. And some people say, "Oh, I want Netflix," and we all want some big streaming platform. But really, one of the things we identified as the tangible goal that we could have is more civil rights lawyers. And so law schools are the perfect place to do that. And we've been amazed at the response and hope to keep doing as many as possible as we tour the country.
Good. Very good. Um, if you did not get Attorney Crump, did you have a plan B like Attorney Brian Stevenson or someone else, or was it just sticking with the original story?
Absolutely. Our short list included um, Brian Stevenson, Eric Holder, Cheryl Ifans, um, amazing lawyers who are protecting people and doing amazing things for our country. And um, we did do the same process of trying to reach those people and got very far. But I think with Attorney Crump, he really was at the top of our list and someone who we all kind of agreed would be the person who we'd hope for the most. I think any one of those people would have completely elevated the film as well. Um, and are still hoping to partner with some of those folks on screenings. Um, but we did also get to a point where we realized maybe there would be too many lawyers in this film. We wanted to include the story of these women, these incredibly brave women, um, sadly of which four had already passed, and the lawyer who represented them was still alive. So we had him to kind of give us so much of what was missing, but we did realize at a certain point maybe there would the film would be too heavy with lawyers if we added more and more folks. There's already a good amount in there, um, but yeah, we absolutely pursued many people and honestly would have been happy with many of the folks that I just named. But we're so glad that we were able to reach Attorney Crump in the end.
Great. Now, the story itself, and researching the story and talking to many people, did you find that people were willing to share information, or was it like opening old wounds when you reached the families of these of the the fine woman?
That's a great question. And I think a question that a lot of filmmakers have to think seriously about. I think it's important to share stories, especially ones that have been missed by the history books, but there are families involved. There are people who live through this, who have lived with it for 40 years. And so, not wanting to re-traumatize anyone, we fortunately were able to raise money to have a mental health fund where cast and crew can access that fund and have for the purposes of seeking counseling. The other thing we did was we took a long time in that first year to meet with the families and to ask them, do you even want us to do this? And if we were to do this, what fears would you have? What hopes would you have? What are the parts of this story you maybe don't want to see discussed publicly? And resoundingly, though, the families were so appreciative that someone was wanting to talk about this. For 40 years, they've shared the story with friends, families. Um, the lawyer who was the lead attorney, his name's Randolph McLaughlin. He teaches at Pace University. He's been talking about this for 40 years. He wrote a book about it. So many people had been sharing the story. It's just that it never reached kind of a point where maybe a filmmaker or a writer had put it together into one thing. And so everyone was excited. Of course, there's some hesitance of just, we want to make sure that if this is going to happen, it's done right. But thankfully, we live here in Chattanooga, so we can meet with people and go to family meetings and have lots of discussions so that everyone felt, okay, I think these people are wanting to do good by us, are wanting to honor this story, and really have good intentions behind wanting to share this. So I'm so grateful that we could form those connections and that they believed in us. And then when we had a rough cut, we showed it to all of the families and asked, what did you think? Did we get anything wrong? And they all said, no, you did it. You did what we were hoping for. So it's been an incredible honor to share that story that people have held for 40 years, but just didn't have, a platform to get it to even more folks. And so quite a responsibility, but of course, an honor to be able to do that for these families.
Is there anything you would do different?
I think I don't know if I would necessarily I would do this differently, but it was very difficult to raise enough money to tell this film the way that we wanted to. We originally wanted it to be a 90-minute feature. And so we set kind of a budget for what it would take to create that feature film. And about a year and a half to 2 years in, we realized we just were never going to raise that amount in the time that we needed. So another thing happened was one of the lawyers who worked on this case passed away in that first year. And so we realized that time was against us. 40 years had already gone by, and we were losing pieces of the story the longer we waited. And so we pivoted to a short film, the 35-minute film that it exists now. So part of me feels regret about not being able to raise that money, to make a feature-length film. But what's happened in kind of in our sharing of this film is so many more people actually have been able to access it because it's 35 minutes. There's many law schools that we approached and said, we've got a 35-minute film that we think you could show in 15 minutes and do a Q&A, or hopefully you could talk about it longer than that. But 35 minutes is a lot easier to fit in a classroom session than 90 minutes. And so all of a sudden, so many more schools, law schools, universities have said to us, yeah, absolutely, we're interested because this works within our kind of time frames. Same with high schools. And so it became this kind of this deep regret for a while that I couldn't raise that money. But now I look at it as, well, we still achieved what we wanted to, and now maybe more people can access it because it's shorter rather than being 90 minutes.
Absolutely. It's just great how you just, stuck to this film. The film took a shape of it on its own too. So what's going to happen next for you? I know this film is Oscar qualifying, And I know you want to work on other projects too, but this is John, this isn't going away. This might be lifelong.
You're right. It's amazing how you get into these things and think, okay, well, this will be, work on this for a little and then I'll work on the next thing. Um, this film has absolutely taken on a life of its own where I think we could easily spend the next couple of years, ensuring its delivery to law schools and places where it can really have an impact. One way to do that is with qualifying for the Oscars. So we we don't our goals are not for awards, and at the same time we understand that by winning them it validates this film and the story, and really honestly is a reflection of the women and their bravery every time we win an award. But we decided maybe 6 months ago or so that the film could qualify, and so we did, and are now in the pursuit of a four-year consideration campaign, and hoping that the Academy will think us worthy of a nomination. Um, we'll put everything we can into it, but just as we said before, or as we talked about before, there's a lot of goals that we have, and more civil rights lawyers is still our priority. Um, so yeah, we'll pursue that as best we can. We'll find out in December, I think, if we've made it past the kind of first hurdles of the Academy Awards, and then they take place in spring of next year. All the while, though, we'll continue our educational screenings, film festivals, and pursuing a permanent home for the film. So that's still in works, and I think the plan right now is I don't want to say for sure, but our hope is that by spring of next year, people will be able to find the film online, maybe on their television sets, but just much more easily rather than the film festivals or programs like this that are so special. So yeah, a lot of exciting stuff, and could probably be busy for the next year or two just working on this film. Um, so yeah, it's very exciting and amazing to see the life this film has had.
And finally, you talked about the response to the community, how appreciative everyone was. Tell me about Attorney Crump's response to the film.
You know, I really couldn't be happier with what's happened with working with him. You meet someone like Attorney Crump, and there's not many people like him. And part of me just assumes that because of the kinds of things he's working on all the time, that there would be some sort of tiredness or sadness that kind of um, emanates from him, and it's the complete opposite. It's just glowing positivity in the midst of just some of the worst things that have happened in our country. But he understands that by smiling, other people smile back at him. And so one of the most incredible moments we've had on this film is introducing him to the families of these five women. And many of them knew about Attorney Crump before, for the last few years or maybe even longer. And so meeting them and seeing them together has just been a highlight of my life, seeing that reaction and knowing how much it means to all of us, that not only is he involved, but he's actually an incredibly positive source for us and is constantly encouraging us and talking about the film with people. And um, yeah, I just couldn't have asked for a better partner to work on the film with. He really is just an amazing person and really truly believes in the film, and you know, is so busy, so busy, and yet still gives an incredible amount of attention to this story and this film. Um, so yeah, just overfilled with gratitude that he could be involved.
And the interesting about that is that you he found a way, or you found a way, both found a way for him to represent the family. Because if he were, you know, active as an attorney back then when it happened, we would have seen him. Now he has a chance to actually do it, years later in a different capacity.
And this is one of those things where it's not a case for him. It's already been done, and he's obviously got many cases, some of which are similar. But yeah, he still wanted to help give them their flowers, to recognize the women, to make sure the world saw what they did. He didn't have to do that. He doesn't have to do these things. He's already very busy as a lawyer, as an attorney, doing the actual work that he's very skilled in. But I've heard him say many times he feels it's a responsibility now that he has influence and power, not just to fight the cases, but to also uplift the stories that were forgotten and were lost in the midst of time. So we know we're not the only film that he's working on too, which is incredible. He's lent his influence and his passion for these stories to many films, and we're just so grateful that we could be one of the projects that he felt passionately about. It's really incredible to see how much time and attention he can give to something like this. Again, with just watching him, we're also just admirers, and so we watch every day him in another state, fighting for someone. And so I'm always worried to say, hey, can you help us with this? Or are you able to attend this thing? But he always responds, and he's always kind, even if he can't make it. And so, yeah, we couldn't be happier with how it's all worked out.
Yes, I call this film like the perfect positive storm. It's just everything worked out so well. You being local, able to gain the trust of the the people there, and your persistence, and it just came across so well. And also connecting history from the past. I didn't know about the KKK Act of 1871 and how that still plays a role today. Just so many layers that this film has that I know our educators watching this will just can have discussions and maybe for days about this. I appreciate you bringing all this to us.
It's been my honor, and I'm so glad that there are opportunities like this. I remember watching some documentaries that I found a little bit boring in high school and middle school, and um, I have purposefully set out to make documentaries that I don't feel like are in that same category. No shade on those films, but I really hope that this is a positive experience for everyone who gets to watch it. And anytime someone watches one of our films, it feels like an incredible honor. It's time out of their day, and yeah, we're just so thankful for this program, and yeah, appreciate us being a part of it. Thank you for having us. Thank you for including the film in this program. We really appreciate it, and for all of the students and educators taking part and watching with us.
John Beater, director of How to Sue the Klan, thank you very much. All the best to you.
Thank you so much. Great being here.
And thank you to our audience for joining us for this important and invigorating conversation. For more information about our upcoming events, please visit us at clevelandfilm.org. I'm Eric Siler. Thank you.